Hey guys, so this is going to be a guide on mastering the Managarmr, and it's going to go over a lot of the mechanics, a lot of tricks, a lot of tips, some certain matchups versus certain dinos that can be kind of tricky if you don't know what you're doing. And I hope you guys learned a lot from this video because I've used the mana for a long time and I think I figured out pretty much every little trick that you can use. I might have missed a few little things here and there, but most of the major things with the mana that you can do are going to be in this video. And if you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, and actually you can join our Discord server where you can ask me questions, you can ask other people questions, and it's just an environment for learning about the game. So if you want to learn more about ARK, or you like soloing, you like PvP, you want to get better, just join the Discord. I respond pretty fast to most questions. Everyone's pretty friendly. It's a great community. We're growing. We're almost at like 500 members, so if you want to join, just drop in. The link will be in the description. So for the first advanced mechanic on the mana, we're going to be talking about the vertical beam boost. So there's also kind of called mana boosting or like breath boosting. Basically what it does is if I jump 3 times, 1, 2, 3, I can't get up here. I can't get to this rock. What if I want to get onto that rock? I can't jump 3 times. I'll have to land and jump again. But if we do a vertical beam boost, we should be able to get up there in only 2 jumps. See? A very big difference. This is a really important thing to know because this is like the most common thing that you will use out of all these advanced tricks. This one is going to be one of the most useful ones. So, how is it done? It takes a little bit of practice, but once you get it the first 2 times, you'll pretty much master it. It's really not hard. So how it works is you jump, and it only works on the second and third jump. Only on the second and third jump can you boost. You cannot boost on the first jump. So once you hit your second jump, you jump again, and as soon as you jump, you hold right click. And I mean as soon as you jump. As soon as you press spacebar, you're going to want to start holding that beam down. And you will get a significant amount of vertical distance versus what you would normally get out of 2 jumps. So we'll do it again. You jump again, and hold right click immediately after jumping. And you'll boost very, very high. See how high? This is 2 jumps, and we're already above like everywhere on the entire map. So 3 jumps can take you up the sky border, so be careful with that. But it's really good for catching flyers that are going up. It's good for getting up to places that you can't normally get, especially on AB. On AB, it's really nice. It's super, super good. So you definitely want to learn that one. So this next trick is a beam boost as well, but it is actually a horizontal beam boost. So it's a similar technique. You're going to jump, you're going to press right, and you're going to hold right click. Sorry, I didn't say that right. You're gonna press D or A depending on which direction you're trying to go. So if I want to go that way, right? I jump, I press A, and I hold right click, and I get an extra boost. And if you hit something on the way down, you'll end up going up a bit, and you get an extra distance. This is good. Honestly, this isn't that useful. I never do this actually. You'll never see me in a video doing this unless it's by accident. But this could be helpful if you can't dash. If you can't dash in a certain area, like you can't dash in Aberration, or you've used your 1 dash in the air, and you really need to get a little bit of extra distance, so you go like this, and then you do this. If you really need that extra distance, you can do this instead. It's worth noting, worth learning how to do, but I'd say it's probably a low priority technique, but it does exist, and a lot of people use this more than I do. And I guess it's just personal preference. So this next one, this is something that I get asked a lot. And this is called beam hovering, or just like levitating. Now, you will pretty much never see people doing this because people don't know how to do it. I sort of figured this out because I like testing this game in general. So this is a technique I use all the time. You will pretty much never see me not doing, like if there's going to be a mana clip in my video, I'm probably doing this at some point. So it looks a little bit like this. And it's just me floating. You see, I'm floating around. There's no beam. You can hear the sound. If you listen, you can hear the sound of the beam. But there's no beam coming out. So what is with this? What's with this? Like, how is that happening? important to note, the beam is not visible, and there is no beam actually coming out. Like, if I'll do that on something, or like this bird right here, there is no, like, I'm not damaging it. Like, I'm not damaging this PT. There's actually no beam, just in case you didn't know. There is a version of this that you can actually, you know, have the beam out. You just have to wait longer. And the thing with this is, right, this beam is obvious. There's a lot of smoke coming out. It's, or like, whatever the fuck that is, like frost, I don't know what it is. But this is good. It has its own use. I don't use it when I'm, like, if I'm hovering over an ob, right? Just trying to see what's there before I land on it, which is a good habit. Like, you should hover over something. Like, if you see a person, you should just hover over them a bit. Like, you know, just fly over and make sure that you're not going to land on something nasty. And then you can land. But this beam is better for when you know, see a flyer, right? But it's in the air. How are you going to get it? But you fly up to it like this, and you kill it in the air. This is really good. So especially if we combine it with the beam, the vertical beam boost, if we go as high up as possible, right? We're beaming, and then once you've already got the beam out, you only have to tap A or D, and you'll hover, and you can freeze anything that's in the air. So this could be really good. If you can get it right on top of a player while they're flying, you can kill them midair, depending on how good your mana is. Super, super important. Like, actually, you need to know how to do this, because there are going to be times where you need to get over top of somebody who's, like, really high up, or you need to chase somebody in the air, and you need to just do a little bit of extra damage to kill them. So the next thing to note, and this is super, super important, but it's just like a knowledge thing. Like, you don't have to practice this. All it is jumping off your mana when you're at a stem. What does this do? You might think, you see people do this all the time, and most people will know why you do this, but there's some weird thing with the mana where when it runs out of stamina and you jump off, you can regenerate it faster. So I'm going to use up about half my stam. I'm going to land and just watch how long it takes to regen. Keep in mind it's going to feel a little bit faster because this mana doesn't have a lot of stam. Actually, I don't even think that matters. I'm pretty sure it's a percentage. But see, that took a while. But if I use up more stam, right, I get to about half. And let's say I'm going to jump off of it. And jump back on. It's going up much faster. You could see how much faster it was going. And there's a way to check. So let's say I use my stam. I'm using all my stam. You'll see people punch their manas, and the reason why is because it shows the stamina change instantly on the thing. So I punched it, and boom, I'm full stam. Which is much, much better than, you know, having to sit there and regen. And it's much more noticeable when the mana has a lot of stam. So the more stam it has, the faster this, like, the faster this works. With like a shitty tame one like this, it's hard to see, but if you jump off the mana, it will regen stamina. That if you ever run out of stam during a mana fight, you can't just sit there like this. You can't just sit there and regen your stam. You're gonna get frozen. But you can jump off for like a second or two, jump away before you get frozen, and you've already got like half your stam back. That's super, super good. Like, you gotta know how to do that. Now this is gonna be about, this is not like more of a mechanic, more of understanding how to use the mana. And everyone knows that the mana's primary attack is this freeze, right? This does a lot of damage. This is the mana's main source of damage, but people make the mistake of always trying to use it. You can't just go up to somebody and freeze them like you can, you know, like a tame or like a wild dino, because players carry Z, and plant Z is what fucks you over when you're on a mana. Mana's biggest counter is plant Y and plant Z. These are the two things that fuck over a mana the most. Also weight grapples as well, depending on what kind of a mana you're running. But so if we pretend this is a player and we just walk up like this and freeze him, and he's like, it doesn't even matter if he's facing the other way or if he's facing us. It is important that you don't just walk up to random people and do this, right? Even if you have a melee mana, it can be really risky. Like, he can Z you before you freeze him. If someone's... Keep in mind what someone's holding in their hand, right? Like, you'll see in videos that I sometimes don't... Like, I could jump on somebody, but I don't. Right? Like, if I do this, like, up and down, I can still get Z'd, but I'm choosing when I'm going to jump in, because when I wait for them to switch weapons to plant Z, so, or off of their plant Z to something that isn't plant Z, so I know that I can actually run in really quick, get a freeze, get a bunch of damage, and jump away. If they don't die from it, it's fine, because if you sit there and get greedy, they're gonna have time to pull out that plant Z, and if you get Z'd, you might be in trouble. Depends on, like, you know, what you do after that. and it depends on what kind of things that person's carrying. If you get pocket giga, it can be really scary. You know, if you don't want to foot PvP, all you do is you equip your shield, which you should always have, to be honest, if you're going to PvP. You equip your shield and you just hide right here. They can't hit you. They just can't hit you. You hit in the corner like this of your mana, or like if you're in a panic, it really doesn't matter where you go. Just put your back against the mana and hold your shield out. And let me just get a shield for the actual example. It would be a bit better. You hold out your shield and you are pretty much covered. Like, there's no way that they can possibly hit you or bully you, or like they can grapple you, but you want to have that cutter out. Like, you know, you have that cutter ready, boom, cut it, instantly get back, cut it, instantly block. You know, and then once your mana will like be unstunned in about, I'd say it takes, I don't know, it's covered like 5 seconds, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it feels a lot longer in game. So you will be able to jump back on instantly and jump away. You want to jump away instantly. And freezing is basically, it's a noob trap, because a lot of the time people don't have manas with a lot of damage. So there's a lot of like unofficial, like typically the majority of manas will have like 1,500 or less melee. Like I see 2,000 melee manas are getting more common, but even 2,000 melee isn't enough. It's not enough. Like, you go up to somebody like this point blank, freeze them, and even if they don't pull it Z right away, and you still get a chance to beam them a little bit, they're not gonna die. Like, that shit just does not do a lot of damage. It needs to be like over 3k or like 2.5k to deal enough damage to actually kill a player. So if you're gonna freeze, be smart about it. So now let's talk about Z avoidance. So it is one thing to, you know, never decide that hey, I'm never going to freeze anybody because I don't want to get Z'd. It's another thing to understand how to dodge a plant Z, right? And this keeps in mind that you are paying attention to what someone's holding, because you need to have that in the back of your mind, because that's going to help you time when someone throws their Z. You are essentially predicting what they're going to do. You're not reacting to what they do, you're predicting, and then like making a decision off of that. Like, I don't go like this, oh, he's thrown a Z, let me jump away. Yeah, sometimes it happens, but typically what I'm going to see, right, if I go up to freeze this guy, so let's pretend he doesn't see me, and I go up, I freeze him, oh, he like unfreezes, or he like moves, and I see him pull up the Z, I'm jumping away. Because if someone pulls out Z, they're instantly throwing it. Every time. Guaranteed. Everybody does that. They're going to throw it immediately. So when you see the Z come out, you know, you freeze him, oh, he's unfrozen, it didn't kill him, jump away when he pulls out Z. Because you do not want to be Z'd. And there are tactics to avoid this as well, like other ways. Like, this guy could have Z out, right? But if I go like this, right, you can kind of like walk around them like this. You can kind of walk past them and then freeze back behind you like this. And it, like, see how long I can get? Like, I can actually freeze something that's standing right here. Like, you could freeze somebody that's here, and if you had, actually don't have. You can't spawn that shit. You can't. Okay. Well, if you have Plant Z, right? You could throw it, but you're gonna have to throw it like way the fuck over there. Alternate ways, right? If you have a really high damage mana, you can do shit like this. You jump in, right? This person, let's say this person is on foot and they know that they've already like fought me before. They know that like I'm on a mana. They know where I am. They know that we're fighting. They have Z out there ready. If you jump in, right? You can jump in, boom, jump away instantly. And then you do it again, you jump in. You can still get Z'd, keep in mind, you can still get Z'd. But it is much, much harder. And especially if you do something like this. Like, say this person, this pretend dummy is facing, like, he's facing the way he's facing, right? We jump in. Actually, this is kind of a bad spot, but if we jump the way he's facing and we jump behind him, there is no way he can Z us. If you get Z'd, it is most likely due to luck. If you dive them enough and make them spam all their Z and they eventually run out, you'll sort of tell. When they start getting really conservative over their Zs, you can start taking more risky dives. Like, go like closer to them, dive right on top of them. Then they might try to throw more Zs. You can like walk up, like run up and then turn. You can dive straight down, then strafe to bait Zs. It's like a lot of stuff. You can bait out all their Zs so they have nothing left to use on you, which is really nice because once they run out of Zs, well, guess what? You just do this. So the next counter for the mana is plant Y, and you might think, how do I counter plant Y? Well, the response to that is don't land at plant Y. That's how you counter plant Y. I'm serious. There's no way for you to kill somebody who's standing in a field of plant Y, really, if you're on a mana. You can't just dash in on them and hit them with the AoE. It's not gonna. If they have a field big enough, it's not gonna work. So, if there's a guy standing in Y, what you're gonna do? You're like, oh, I see a dude. Oh, look, he's standing in Y. This is what you do. You leave and you go find someone else to fight. So the next counter to the mana is the weight grapple. This is like a situational counter because not all the time will a mana be overweighted by somebody with a weight grapple. So, you know, if I have a weight mana and I jump away with someone grappled to me, they're in some trouble. But if it is a melee mana, then, oh, I won't be able to move. And what happens a lot of, what the go-to usually is they'll either weight grapple you and then Z you, or they'll weight grapple you and they'll start flaming like this. They'll start flaming you over like your mana like this. And that does a lot of damage. And you might be panicking like, oh no, I can't move, I can't turn. But remember that your mana, while not moving, can hit all the fucking way over there behind you, right? You can hit way over there. And if this person's moving around, they might walk into your beam, and when you freeze them, it will cut their grapple. So if I can't move and somebody's standing right here, flaming me, which is typically where they will stand when they flame you, they'll stand right here because they won't be able to. It'll be harder to reach you from here. You gotta like sort of get real close. You gotta get up there, get the beam down. When that happens, you are in range to beam them. And another little tip here, so let's say your mana is weight grappled, right? You can't move, and the guy is behind you, like, I don't know, shooting combo. You can't beam him, you can't break the grapple. So, there's another alternative, and that's if the guy is, you know, your mana can't move or it can barely move, you know, you can't do this and beam the guy and freeze him. What you can do is jump off and just whip that shit the other direction and then start beaming him again. Jump off, whip, jump back on, freeze. Jump off, whip, jump back on, freeze, jump off, whip, jump back on, freeze. It's really, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty good. You want to just keep that in mind. So as for stats on manas, there are pretty much like, there are a few routes you could go on a mana. And there's a general rule of thumb that I like to follow. Unless your mana can get to high melee, which I would consider like high melee to be like a good bit above 2k. Like you want to aim for like 2.5k. 3k is pretty good. There are manas that can go up to 4k. They're rare, but if you can get up to like 3k, that's solid. That's a lot of, that's actually doing a lot of damage. You can kill people with that. If you can't get past like 2.5k or anything like that, then in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend putting any points into melee. Because, here's the thing. Like, Mana Beam really doesn't do a lot of damage until you have like a fuckload of points invested into it. So, even if you freeze someone at point blank, you're still not going to be able to kill them. It's not worth it because you can get Z'd. There's just no point of trying to kill somebody like that. You want to focus on, you know, fighting tames. You're not going to be able to foot PvP or kill people who are on foot with a mana that has like no melee like that. So if your mana is incapable of getting really high melee, then just go for a weight stam build. It's great. You can literally outrun everybody. Nobody will ever be able to catch you. You can just go wherever you want. You can do stupid shit and get away because you have all this stam that nobody else has on their manas. Not to mention, you also have all this weight, so if you get weight grappled, you're fine. You can carry shit from a raid and get away with it. It's nice. It's nice to have. It's really convenient. You can even put a little bit of points into melee if you just want to deal a little bit more damage to like PvE stuff, but it's not necessary. Just don't invest a fuckload of points into stuff like that. And as a general rule, never put points into health unless you're like mana dashing into a base. Don't ever put points into health. It's so useless. You do not need that much health. Whatever the health the mana has on pop, which is probably like, I don't know, like 10 to 14k, maybe a bit higher. You don't need more than that. You do not need more than that. You shouldn't be trying to get more health because only thing that's really going to be dealing any damage to you would be another mana. And you should just practice on getting better with the mana instead of just saying, oh, well, I want to have more health in case I get frozen. You don't want to do that. You want to be actually ready to just not get frozen. If you don't get frozen, then you're not going to be taking that much damage, and you don't need that much health. So you just get better at the game, rather than, oh, I'm going to pump all health because I need a crutch. That's not going to be very helpful for learning. So, what is helpful for learning, though, if you're really new on the mana, helps you manage your stamina. Go for a lot of stam early on. If you have a really shit mana, or you're just new to manas and you have one that's like a bread mana, just pump a lot of stam, because if it can't get high melee, just go for the high stam, and once you have that super high stam, it's gonna feel really good. It's gonna suck when you transfer over to a melee mana eventually, but you're gonna be a little bit better at managing your stamina because of it. And you just want to be aware of the fact that with less stamina, obviously, you can dash less times, so you don't get as much distance. You have to be careful, and you have to play the game differently, because you can't just dash away from everybody, because you're gonna run out of stam eventually. So like, I would start out with like weight stamina manas, and then once you get better with it, you know, you dodge Z's. You can fight people on foot just for practice. Just fight them. Don't expect to kill them, but just fight them and see how many Z's you can dodge. See like how long you can keep the fight going, and that'll really help you get better. And then it'll be really good when you transfer to a melee mana, because you'll be used to the stam. And an additional tip is, if you're ever moving with anything, pretty much any creature in the game, and you need to regen stamina, don't stam out fully. Like, just don't. Because if you stam out completely, you have no way of getting away. Right? If I completely ran out of stam here, and say a guy comes, I actually can't get away. Like, there's literally nothing I can do aside from jump off and try and fight back. But you don't want to be put in a situation where you only really have like one choice. You want, like, if you're ever gonna land at like 25% stam, so you still have a good amount of jumps and dashes ready if you really need to get away. And you stop, you regen a bit more. The guy comes, you jump away. You know, don't ever be stuck on no stam, because you really want to have access to those jumps just in case. So another common thing you want to keep in mind, especially when you're fighting other manas, this is pretty much only applicable to tames that can't use guns or like any tools while mounted. So for example, the mana, I can't equip a crossbow and shoot off the side of the mana. But if you're in a freeze battle, right, and the other guy's losing the freeze battle, just keep in mind, or in general, like even if he doesn't lose, people love to do this. They'll come to you, right? Let's say I have a freeze battle with this. He's frozen, right? And he's alright, this is a fucking shit example. Right, just pretend there's a mana here, right? We're freeze battling, or pretend I'm the enemy mana, right? I'm freeze battling you, and then all of a sudden he does this, throws a Z. You want to be ready for that, because the thing is that people will lose the mana fight, and then they know they're gonna get frozen first, so they jump off and they do this, and it's really annoying, and you gotta be careful of it, because it's a common thing that people do. Right, you can see your own mana. It's hard to see, like, if they're quick about it, they can, like, jump off, jump back on, right? Like, jump back on like that. I'm shit at it because I obviously don't do it, but it's worth mentioning that you can also do this, but you should also be aware of it. Be aware when the enemy does this, because if you see them jump off their tame, that is a sure sign that you're about to get a Z thrown at you. Like, if they jump off at all while you're freezing them, they are gonna throw a Z, like, guaranteed. And you can also do this when you're losing a mana fight. Just see how fast you can, jump off, throw Z, jump back on, and see how accurate you can be with it. Because if you can do that really fast, they might not be able to expect the Z. Now, they might not see you jump off, and they might not see the Z come out. It could be harder to react to. So the faster you can do this, the better your chances of Zing the enemy will be. So there's some other things to note when you are PvPing with a mana. The mana's beam essentially deals damage in wherever the beam is going, obviously, but it is not restricted to damaging a tame. So if I walk up, like most tames, right, if there's a guy on this griffin, for example, and I start swinging, I'm not hitting the guy, I'm only hitting the griffin. But the thing about the mana and its beam is that it can target players when they're on the back of a tame. So it depends on the angle, and it's really kind of like iffy to get it to work. But you can see, right? Based on the angle that you're facing, you can beam somebody off of a mana. You can beam them off of any tame. It takes a lot of practice to get it, and it's not really the most reliable thing. But if you're ever in a mana fight and you got a really high melee mana, you might be able to come up to them like this and just beam up. You know, obviously not that high, but like you beam like up really high and you can actually hit them. And it looks like, you know, you're not aiming your beam at them. You can't even see them during the fight, but you can actually damage the player if you get the angle right, because it can be really tricky to get it, especially if they're moving and with the weird hitboxes. And it's even hard to see when you're doing it right because you can't really tell when you're hitting them. But, you know, you'll know if they die instantly because you have a really high melee mana, then you'll know. And there's things that are easier to beam people off of, so like Bloodstalkers are really easy to beam people off of because they're standing like right on the ground, so you can just beam directly at their face once the thing is frozen. And good practice in general is, if you've frozen somebody, right, try it and see like if you can hit them off the back with your beam before you kill their tame. And that'll help you get better at getting the beam to actually hit the person off of their tame. Because it can be really difficult to do this. And it used to be more viable than it is now. Like, you used to be able to beam someone off like from like fucking like miles away and just snipe them. But now you really can't. You just can't. And if you get too close, you know, the head hitbox gets fucked, you know, you're freezing the mana instead. It's tricky. And sometimes you'll feel like you're aiming directly at them, but you're not dealing any damage to the player. So it takes a lot of practice, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Another thing to keep in mind when you're fighting owls is there's a few specific things that are different when you're fighting an owl, because owls are going to try and land and freeze bomb you, and basically there's a chance based on the angle of where they do it. So if they freeze you from like back here, chances are you're going to get dismounted. And obviously you can remount as soon as your mana unfreezes, but what the typical thing is, they try and freeze you, they jump off, and they Z your mana. And they Z your mana, and then now you can't get back on. Obviously, you know, you could just run around it for a bit and get back on it later, but you know, you don't want to be in that situation in the first place. So if you see an owl and he's coming down to freeze, the thing with owls is once they've chosen to freeze, their trajectory is like set. Like they're moving in that direction. There is literally nothing that can stop them from falling. Like, they're going to land where they're going to land, and it's your job to jump out of the way in time. And you have to time it very right, because if you time it wrong, right, let's say there's an owl coming, he's coming to freeze, and I jump, and I make it away, I can come back in, freeze him again, and chances are they'll fly at you and try to freeze, and it becomes this sort of like game of like jump away from the freeze. There's some like timing to it, prediction. It can be kind of messy sometimes, but once you freeze their owl, you're in a better spot. And I want to just let people know that if you mistime your jump, so, you know, don't just fuck around with an owl thinking that he can't fuck you over, because he definitely can. If he comes from the sky at the right angle and you jump away too late, what will happen is your mana's going to get frozen midair like this, and you're going to get flung off, and you're going to be taking fall damage if you don't react in time, which you might not, because you are like, how the fuck, why am I falling? This happens sometimes, and sometimes your mana just gets fucking, you know, you jump off like this, oh no, you're dismounted, and then you're like really far from your mana. Depending on where it happens, right? Like, maybe it happens in a bad spot, like off this cliff, and the mana lands, well, it wouldn't happen this high, but the mana lands up there, and, you know, I land down here. It can get you into some tricky situations. So make sure you time that jump properly, because you can actually die to it if you're not careful. It will dismount you, and the reason why it dismounts is because it'll freeze the mana and not you, and you can walk through things that are frozen. So once your tame is frozen and you're not, you fall off. It works this way with pretty much every tame. So if it freezes like the bottom of the mana hitbox while you're in midair, you're getting dismounted like this, and your mana's gonna be frozen and you're gonna fall. So just note those things when fighting an owl, because they can't kill you with the owl, but they can definitely get you in a position where you're killable after they've frozen you. If they Z you right, or if they got grapple or something like that, they can fuck you over. Against Bloodstalkers, the mana is the best counter to them. And that's because once you get up to a Bloodstalker, you can freeze them, and there's basically nothing they can do. A lot of the time, the rider is going to get frozen off and die straight away if you get the angle right. And if they are frozen at point blank, which basically requires that they're not in the water. So if they're not in the water, it's an easy kill. So if I freeze this thing, this shit'll die really fast. And it's frozen for a long time. Alright, so let's pretend I am fighting this Bloodstalker, right? And I just try and aggro. I'm within range. He's instantly gonna grab me. And that's not what you want to happen. Because if that happens to you, you're in a bad spot. Once you... It's kind of like a dance, you know. He moves in too close, he's dead. If you move in too close, you're dead. You have to be really careful, right? And it's super, super easy for Bloodstalker to pick in the water. See, like, it's super, super easy. And obviously, this one's got aimbot because it's on neutral, but if it's just assume that the player is good enough. You don't want to assume that they're going to miss because they're shit. Like, that's not the assumption you want to make. So if a Bloodstalker is ever caught on land like this, it is super, super easy for you to just come up and beam him like this, and then he's dead. Right? But if you catch him out in the water, you might be able to kill him depending on how close he is, but if he's at like max range like this Pelagornis, right? Like, I'm really not doing any damage here. Like, this Pelagornis is probably not going to die. And that's a Pelagornis. Like, that thing's got nothing for health. Like, I've basically done no damage. And I'm still beaming it, right? So if you can free something at max range, you're really not going to be able to kill it. Only if it gets super close. So if you see a Bloodstalker in the water, don't even fuck with it, just leave it be. Because you are at a way higher risk of dying than the Bloodstalker is. On land, on the other hand, if you can get up to him like this, pretending this Bloodstalker is the strike, just come up, freeze him point blank, and just burst it down. Try and kill it as fast as possible. Just remember though, the player, while frozen, can jump off and end up zing your mana. So just keep an eye out for that, because that's pretty much the only defense a Bloodstalker player has, other than just trying to sit through and survive the full beam. You have the ability to, like, predict, you know, if you see him jump off, or you see him start, you know, he equips a Z in his hand, then you can jump away and pick a different angle to freeze from. A good strategy is, if the Bloodstalker is frozen, get behind it, because that means the player has to, that player has to dismount in order to actually Z you. They can't just throw the Z from the Bloodstalker, they actually have to jump off.